Hello, welcome to Walk in the Park. My name is Tony Ingram, and today is March 26th, 2014, episode 71. You can see all of my shows at walkinpark.com, my vid blog. Today, we've got a lot of interesting stuff. Let's see, first we're going to, we're going to talk about trees again. Last week we talked a lot about trees. Last week we talked about this tree, which is a branch of the eastern hemlock tree, which is a very common tree in our gorges. It likes dark, cool places, can live on steep slopes. It's a very sort of essential tree to protect the slope stability and also cool off the streams and so forth in our gorges. But you see those little white dots along the twig? Those are a insect called the hemlock woolly adelgid. It's an aphid-like insect that puts this sort of woolly, cottony, waxy material on them while they sit and feed on the twigs, on these little stems of the twigs, and eventually that causes a walling off of the vascular tissues inside the leaf, the needle and so forth, and eventually kills the leaves, and that kills the trees. So today we're going to continue the discussion about insects that are affecting our trees in our forests. And we talked last time, Mark Whitmore, Cornell, who is a forest entomologist, gave us an extensive discussion down at 6 Mile Creek Preserve in the city of Ithaca about the hemlock woolly adelgid. But he also talked about ash trees, and this happens to be a white ash tree, and they are a very prominent part of our forests, maybe something like 7 or 8% of our forests, the different species of ash. And there is an insect that's coming our way. It's in the state called the emerald ash borer, which is going to kill all our ash trees. And so how do we respond to this? How do we work long-term to make sure we don't lose our ashes? This is completely, or at least we can restore them. We'll talk about that. I have a little video clip that's coming up. This is by the way, the compound leaf of a white ash tree, and which is the most common kind of ash that we have around here. So we'll look at a little video. Also, that same time last November with Mark Whitmore of Cornell University in the 6 Mile Creek Preserve. So let's bring that right up.
The emerald ash borer started in the Detroit area. A very interesting story that, I guess, good to be politically aware of how it got here. Basically, we think it came in wood packing material. And you know how much international commerce there is, right? Wood packing material is very common. I was actually giving a talk in Niagara County a couple of years ago, and so it got started in the Detroit area, and I mentioned that it probably got started in the early 90s, maybe late 80s, we're not sure. And afterwards a fellow comes up to me and sort of meekly says, well, I think I brought it in. And I said, oh, really? Tell me the story. And he said, well, I'm a retired automotive engineer, worked all my life in Detroit. And you're right. The late 80s, early 90s is when we started bringing in tons of parts from China. Auto parts are heavy, and they come in wood packing crates. The story about it in China is interesting. It's like you're always thinking about, okay, native bugs are in control, right? And in China, the emerald ash borer is in control. They have resistance by the host trees, and they have natural enemies. Two things we don't have here in America. Well, the Chinese species aren't really that, beautiful stately tree that we have here with our ash trees, and so they took our ash trees and planted them in China for street trees, and that's when the emerald ash borer decided it liked them and killed them. And waste not, want not. What do you do with the lumber? You turn it where you make packing crates and ship parts over to America. I think that's a scenario that makes a lot of sense to me. So I guess the lesson from that is that we're at the beginning of this assault on our ecosystems, and that we really have to be cognizant of the dangers that are out there, and the fact that they'll continue as long as we continue to buy cheap goods from overseas. And I don't see that stopping anytime. What it did do, though, was wake us up as a profession as to what's out there. We didn't expect to see anything like the emerald ash borer as an aggressive forest pest. There's hundreds of species in the same genus, and here in North America, they don't cause problems. In fact, they actually are good in the ecosystem because they kill trees, but they kill trees that I think are meant to come out. They're weak, and you don't want the weak individuals breeding in a population. So they actually perform a very important ecosystem service in the native situation. But then you get this wacko bug come in. There's no resistance, no natural enemies. It's had its way. I have hope, though, and it involves a 50-year or 100-year plan. We have to be smart. And I think I've been working with these bugs now for, a while, and it's been pretty depressing. You go to areas in the Midwest, as you very well know, you see all the dead ash trees. I mean, here in New York State, we have more ash trees than any other state in the nation. Some of the counties have up to 28% of their trees there's ash. Here in the southern tier, ash are everywhere, and unfortunately, they especially like to come into areas of disturbed habitats. They seed in very readily, and those are usually in areas of human infrastructure, around houses, power lines, roads. And so we have so much rural forest land here, and people build their homes in the forest, that the human impact of these trees dying is going to be huge. And quite frankly, I don't think there are enough arborists here in Ithaca to take care of the problem. And when it hits there, it's going to hit hard and strong. We'll probably have, I'm just guessing wildly, maybe 10 years to deal with it, and then all the ash will be gone, and that's it. Unless you protect your ash with insecticides, which are very effective. I have a 3-point plan for saving ash, and that involves, number one, preserving the genome. Preserve the genome by collecting seeds and by preserving magnificent individuals across the landscape so that you have seed available once this thing moves through. Number two, work on breeding resistance in our native species, and the Forest Service is working on that right now very hard, and I hope they have great success. They have great tools. And number three is to get biological controls in place. And they're working on that right now. It's a thankless task because there's so many of those emerald ash borer out there, and they're moving so quickly. You're not going to really see the impact of the biological controls until the emerald ash borer has gone through, and you have very few trees out there, and then they might become effective. But without the biological controls, the long-term possibility of bringing ash back onto the landscape is a non-starter. We have to have resistance, biological control, genetic diversity to maybe after the emerald ash borer has moved through, bring ash back in the landscape. There is hope, and I think you have to focus on the hope so that you know where to go to put your energy. If you just throw up your arms and say, all's lost, why bother? You're going to lose them all. My objective is to bring ash back on the landscape in its full glory as it was in the past. I'll probably be dead by then, but who cares? Got to start somewhere.
Okay, well, you're going to be hearing a lot more about the emerald ash borer, and there's a lot of stuff online. If you go to that nys.info website, there's more videos and lots of information about the emerald ash borer. One thing I've heard discussed is will the bitter winter kill off the emerald ash borer in the trees? We've had such cold temperatures, and the evidence appears that probably not much. If it does, they'll come right back quite fiercely. They're under the bark, burrowed into the tree, the larvae are, and that protects them actually more than the hemlock woolly adelgids. So I don't think there's a lot of hope. We might get by a little bit of time, but I'm not sure what that's actually going to be worth, other than just having a little time to get ready for the onslaught. which is going to be, as I said, you're going to hear a lot more about the emerald ash borer because it's coming right into town, coming onto your property. You may have ash trees on your property that will have to be taken down. It can be very expensive, and very expensive for a municipality and its street trees and other trees in parks and places like that to deal with. So I know, like, the town of Ithaca is being very proactive on this. I'm sure the city is, and other communities around here are getting ready for the emerald ash borer and putting out traps for the insects to see if it's here, and try to work out a way to weather this storm and look to the future, as Mark said. So, well, now we're going to take a look at, well, here we are in the winter. Still the end of winter. Well, it's actually spring, of course, but winter is hanging on very stubbornly this year. This blob of cold global air keeps coming down on us. I don't know what it's doing the other side. Maybe it's warm over there. I hear that it is. But anyway, this is actually a picture from early winter. That was actually last winter, where you don't have a big dome of ice at Taughannock Falls, which this is, of course. But let's take a look at it at some other times, like maybe when the snow is gone, yet there's plenty of water. This was probably a March picture, or maybe an April picture, taken by Steve Knapp. And Steve Knapp is a photographer, and he has a photography business called Keuka View Photography. So this is one of his beautiful photographs. And you can go to keukaview.com, KEUKAVIEW.com, and see more of his pictures. And here's a comparison of a picture taken a long time ago. This one actually was given me by, scanned by my friend Bill Hecht, who likes to scan historic photographs and take aerial photographs of the area. Look at the top of the waterfall. This is a picture taken back in the late 1800s. Now look at the top of the waterfall and compare it to the top of the waterfall here, or to the top of the waterfall here, and another of Steve Knapp's beautiful pictures. Of course, this is looking from below, the trail below. And notice that in the old picture, the top of Taughannock Falls projected out in a point, and these days it's sort of a V that's inwards. And what's happened, it actually happened a long time ago, is that, well, you may have seen the big cracks in the rocks around here that tend to run at right angles, they're called architectural joints. In any case, it defines a lot of our gorges and our cliffs and so forth, and pools. And it also defines the top of Taughannock Falls. And there's a slab at the corner of which sticks out as the lip of the falls here back in the 1800s. And that was the image that people had of the falls. And in the winter of 1895-96, it broke off, actually. Let's see, go back up here, yeah. It broke off in the winter of 1895-96. A tremendous crash that the farmers heard all around. And now it's looked more like it does today, although it's starting to form another little point on the right-hand side there. And see, look up in there too, maybe see it. And the top of the falls is also getting undermined from below. We'll do another show sometime. We'll go into a lot more detail about how the falls have changed, even within our lifetimes. So Taughannock Falls, changing over time, comparisons. And thank you, Steve Knapp, for those photos. Let's take a look at another aerial photo of Taughannock Falls State Park. There we are. This one's taken in 1929, and this scan again was done by my friend Bill Hecht. And I also have some other versions of this. And someday back in 1929, the state parks hired an aircraft to go around and take photographs. So they have a lot of photographs from one day in 1929, maybe 2 days. In any case, look at Taughannock Point. This is Taughannock Point sticking out in Cayuga Lake. And what is that not there then that is there now? So here is a actually satellite picture of Taughannock Point. Sort of the same view. Yeah, look down on there. So you can see a lot of things on the point that are not in the old picture. The old picture was just open fields, and then now we have on the bottom of the picture, you can see the bathhouse, parking lots. There is a small marina, You can see the marina basin sort of in the middle of the point here, but there's no marina in it. Well, now we have a marina basin in there, central point, the north point, shelters, trees, and their lawns instead of farmers' fields. There was farming going on in what's now the park before it was a park back in the 1800s, say. The park was created in 1925. So here's another satellite view of it, and looking straight down, and look up along the gorge on the right-hand side and the left-hand side of the gorge. And now again compare and see the trees. The forest has grown up along there, and where the to the right of the gorge, and between it and that little road snaking up there, is a forest, mostly forested. That is where the campground is now. But back then, in the upper right picture, and the actually upper center picture of the picture is all farmers' fields and no forest, certainly no campground back in 1925. So that's pretty cool. Another thing, if you look at this picture, you'll see a road at the base of the hill, the beginning of the gorge, and that comes up from Ithaca. But look at the upper right. You do not see a continuation of that road. That's Taughannock Boulevard, Route 89. And if you look on the picture here of today, you can see the road that curves up around the side of the gorge. That's the park road that goes to the overlook, which is actually the upper center there, that little gray spot. That's the parking lot for the falls overlook. But look down on the lower right, you can see Route 89 cutting up through the woods, heading north, and goes all the way to the north end of the lake and beyond up to Savannah, New York. So that was not there. That was built, I believe, in 1933. That was completed, and then a big flood in 1935 messed it up. But that's another story. So neat comparison of then and now in Taughannock Falls State Park. So now we've got a really cool, literally cool video to show you in a second here. I'm going to go to another of Steve Knapp's pictures, but what I'm actually going to do is use that as a cover to go into a video by some of you may have seen. I've taken an excerpt. I've edited out an excerpt and put in my own music and stuff. So I've done an adaptation of a portion of this video by a guy who, on YouTube. He calls himself Mr. Heli, Heli 4444, and he's done a video of Taughannock Falls Winter Flight 2014. And you can actually go, as I'll have a note at the end of the video, is how you can actually go find the whole thing and show what he did. So what he did do is take a small, what you might call a drone, or a little a radio-controlled, remote-controlled vehicle, flying vehicle that could go up and take pictures of the lip of Taughannock Falls, and they're really amazing. And so if you go to his full video, you can actually see that instrument that he used, and that's a whole interesting discussion in and of itself. But let's go to Steve Knapp's winter picture here of Taughannock Falls. I was taken this winter, while we queue up the next video here. Okay, it's pretty amazing. Extraordinary footage. Only could be gotten by something that you can maintain in stationary position in flight. Actually, they call it a quadcopter. It's sort of like a little helicopter. And they're interesting devices. They enable people to put a camera, probably a GoPro camera or something like that, on a this little device that's controlled by remote control, which I understand takes quite a lot of practice to get good at. And I can see obviously that he is good at it. Um, in any case, it does raise a lot of issues. You shouldn't just rush out and get something like that. You'll have to pay a pretty penny, I guess, to do it. But because you should just research on the laws that are evolving on this and court decisions and so forth, and also restrictions in various locations as to just where and how you can use such a device. So that's sort of an evolving issue, which Mr. Heli 4444 has addressed. Um, okay, we're going to go now. Well, hey, it's springtime, go hiking in the gorge. Oh, great, Yeah, it's not quite spring-like weather, but pretty soon it'll be warm. Maybe next week it'll be 50 or 60 or something like that. Let's rush out to the parks, like the Gorge Trail at Buttermilk Falls State Park. Yeah. Oh, man, when you get there, look what you find. Oh, man, even after the snow is melted and the woods are all clear, and maybe it's 70 degrees. Who knows? Sometime next month, maybe we'll get something like that. But the trail is closed. Why do they keep these trails closed? What are they trying to do to us? Well, you look down in the gorge, and even though the snow is gone from the trails and up on the hills and stuff, the gorge is cold and dark. And there's a lot of ice is built up along the trail. You can see all that. That's the trail down there, the Gorge Trail at Buttermilk Falls, all full of ice. And that's kind of a risky place to go. Here's ice on the trail, even though a lot of it's melted. You can slip off and slide right into the creek. And tell you the truth, I've done it. And you don't want to do that because it's very dangerous. It can cost you your life. Here's some other steps and so forth, covered with ice, even though it's melted otherwise. So you want to take this very seriously. People do go past the barricades, and every once in a while somebody gets hurt, has to be rescued, or sometimes there's even fatalities from people slipping on icy steps and either falling there and getting injured or actually falling into the stream and running into big problems there. Now, one of the other issues is not only is there ice on the trail, but look at the ice above the trail. This is in the gorge in Buttermilk, and there's a trail right there in the middle of the picture. And look at these big ice formations, and some of them are little seeps up on the cliffs that turn into these huge icicles. And when it starts to thaw, it can come crashing down on somebody that's trying to walk along that trail. So that's extremely dangerous. Here's another shot like that. There's ice in the trail, but there's also ice above. So that's quite a hazard. So there's a lot of hazards in the gorges, and you want to wait until the gorges are open. There are things that have to be done to get the gorges ready. One of the other hazards when you get thaws is that sometimes you get roaring water in the gorges, and not only is the trail slippery, but on the ice, you get on the ice, you can slip and actually end up in this, and it's very unforgiving. You will not get out of that. And in fact, that's punctuated by this, emphasized by this memorial plaque that you may have seen on the Gorge Trail in Buttermilk Falls to William Chapin, Bill Chapin, who was he worked for Ithaca College in their safety division, but he also worked as a seasonal park patrolman for the Finger Lakes State Parks, where I knew him, where I used to work there. And in March, it was March 1986, we had a really warm day, and some Cornell students decided to head into Buttermilk Glen, and they got stuck on a piece of ice over the roaring water like this, probably worse than that actually. And one of them slid in and drowned, and there was a call. The other one was stuck on the ice, and there was a call out to emergency personnel, and Bill Chapin showed up with someone else, and he tried to get across the ice to the fellow that was still surviving, and he himself went in as a rescuer. So that was a very traumatic for the local emergency community and police community and so forth. And so this plaque was put up, I think, with help from the family of one of the Cornell students. Paul Schurz was the student, I believe, who passed away in this incident. So you don't want to go in the gorges until they're ready for you to go in there safely. Because another thing that has to be done is you will, next month in April, they'll start doing this, which is called scaling. Now, that is a park employee called a scaler who rappels down the cliff. There are people up on the top of the cliff lowering a rope that he's on. He's all proper rock climbing gear and so forth. And he has it's actually a woman that does this too. I'm not sure which one this is. What's called a fireman's pike pole, and it's used to pull off winter loosened rock. Now, this shale we have was once mud in an ancient sea and compressed, and when water gets in it, it soaks into the rock, and in the winter it freezes, and on the surface of the cliff, it splits up all these fragments, which can come down on your head when the trail, when it thaws and when the trail is open. So it's not safe to go into the gorges until they have gone over all the cliffs over the trails in our various gorges around here. The Taughannock usually being the only exception because the trail is wide enough. And they try to keep that open year round unless the ice has gotten too bad or there's a big landslide or something like that. So if you go over to Robert Treman State Park, one of the trails that has been open is this is in the upper park. You can see what says the South Trail or the Rim Trail. It's the South Rim Trail. That goes over normally to see this waterfall, Lucifer Falls, which is 115 feet high and which has looked like this winter. And it was fun. It's fun. You can go over there. That trail has been open to the overlook, looking back at Lucifer Falls here. No farther because there is a staircase there that's quite dangerous with ice, so they closed there. However, since sometime last month, this trail, the South Trail, has been closed because they got all iced up. In fact, the park manager described it as a luge run. So until the ice is melted out of there, unfortunately, we're going to have to stay off the South Trail, the South Rim Trail, until, like I say, the ice is gone. So don't rush out there and run into the gorges and get into trouble and run into trouble. This is at Buttermilk Falls again, a sign. So there are other trails. The trail at the Rim Trail at Buttermilk Falls is open. The Bear Trail, which goes along the creek in the upper park, and the Lake Treatment Trail goes around the little lake up there, is open. So you can do those trails. Larch Meadow, that's in the lower park. So there are trails that are open. Like I say, the Gorge Trail at Taughannock. There are trails that are open you can go into. So I want to thank you all for joining me today. Let me get back to the scene here. Okay. And we'll see you again next time. This is, again, Walk in the Park, episode 71, March 26th is our date. So have a good week, and we'll see you again soon.